Okay, so thanks everybody for joining once again for this experience with Chef Russell Jackson, moderated by Adrienne Mack. Very, very excited to get deep into this, so let's just dive right in. So I wanted to introduce our moderator today, Adrienne Mack. She is the CEO of Miss Mack Enterprises and Curated Culture NYC. She has over 20 years of social human services and over 15 years experience in the hospitality industry. Founded Lean in Harlem, New York, where all my Harlem people at, and served as an advisory board member for the Salvation Army. She's currently the co-chair of Promote East Harlem Committee and served on the Manhattan Community Board 11 in East Harlem. So please, 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 everyone, give a warm welcome virtually to Adrienne Mack as we dive into this experience with Chef. Adrienne, are you ready? Adrienne, are you there?
Awesome.
There we go.
Can you see me now?
All right, we're here. We're live. Hey, y'all.
Absolutely excellent. Welcome, everyone. Happy Black History Month. I am so excited to introduce you to our incredible award-winning chef, Russell Jackson, originally hailing from Southern California, and opened his restaurant Reverence right here in Harlem, giving us the best of infused cuisine. What's wonderful is that this gentleman serves on the WITCO board as well as the Aspen Institute. And we are going to be enjoying some of his incredible food today as we take a journey in African American culture and history. So with that being said, Chef Russell.
Great to have you here in my kitchen, even though all socially distanced and happy. Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you all. I am Russell Jackson of Reverence in Harlem.
Excellent. All right. So Chef Russell Jackson, tell me a little bit about, we're going to be going over the food, learning a little bit about Chef Russell Jackson, the food that he's going to be creating, a little bit of history about African American cuisine, because as you and I have discussed many times, is that African American cuisine is sometimes misconstrued as Southern cuisine as being African American. And that's not true. Although it's a part of our culture,
absolutely,
it's not completely our culture. And then we're also going to get into questions and comments and answers and stuff. So if you have questions, write them down, get live in that chat. Make sure you follow Russell Jackson right there on Reverence. You can also follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all of that stuff. So with that being said, let's jump right into it. So Chef Russell, what shaped your vision as a chef, becoming a chef?
Well, the story's a long story, and it goes all the way back to my childhood. I started to cook when I could walk, and I have been doing it ever since. It's just a part of who I am and how I operate. I'm very fortunate that I grew up in Southern California at a time in a place where there was an amazing plethora of exceptional cuisines. So I was able to learn from quite a few amazing chefs throughout my tenure of being raised in Southern California and then ultimately working and growing up in Northern California and being part of the industry in the early 80s and late 90s, opening my first restaurant in Southern California in 1993 and then closing it about 18 months later after the fire, the flood, the pestilence, and then the OJ trial.
1992 is an epic year in Southern California.
To move to San Francisco and then open my largest venue with Lafitte on Pier 5 in a 125-year-old landmark building over the water, and then eventually moving here to New York to do television and then deciding to get back into doing what I really do, which is cooking for people face-to-face and doing my most personal project, which is here in Harlem.
So let's talk about that. You landed right here in one of the meccas of African American culture. So why did you choose Harlem?
Well, interestingly enough, my wife, who is Bulgarian, was living here, and I was living another sort of hopping around in different parts of the city. And it was interesting enough, I spent an awful lot of time with her here, and just fell in love with it.
Yeah.
And one of the really interesting things is about me. I grew up in a beach community in Southern California, and I had a very diverse upbringing. And I'd never in my entire life, even though my cousins and my family were from the South and from East LA and South Los Angeles, and I spent a lot of time growing up in those areas, I'd never officially lived in a predominantly African-American community for my entire life. And, I was a surf rat. So a bit of a beach bum. And that was my upbringing and my understanding. And I'd gone through so many diversities, so many challenges in my life growing up as an African-American in these predominantly white communities. I wanted the experience of being immersed in an African-American community. And I felt, and what I realized was that living here, that what I do was sadly needed.
Yeah.
This restaurant, as myself being the sole owner, it is the first, as we understand it, it is the very first fine dining African-American chef-owned restaurant since 1988 in Patrick Clark, which has significant historic significance that doesn't fall lightly on my shoulders.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about some of the.
I'm going to cook while we're talking.
Yes, cook, please, because I'm hungry. I don't know about you guys. I'm hungry. I'm a cooker. I love to cook, and I love to, enjoy great food. My fiance is a huge eater, so I had to make sure I didn't eat any lunch or breakfast today because I definitely want to taste this cuisine. Now, chef, as you're cooking,
yes,
let's talk about some of these iconic African-American chefs, such as Patrick Clark, whom you just mentioned.
Right.
Share a little bit of knowledge with me about that, and with us, because we all want to learn.
So Patrick was originally from Brooklyn, went on to some of his major accomplishments was being the first African-American chef to grace Iron Chef, not Iron Chef America, which I fought on, but the original Iron Chef way back in the day. He was also, again, a restaurateur and an owner that wasn't cooking perceived Southern cuisine. He was cooking American cuisine, which in turn was actually very much elevated French cuisine. He was a vanguard in our industry. He was a chef's chef. I mean, yes. Tons and tons of people, especially in California, where he eventually moved to and opened a restaurant there, which is how I was able to meet him at Beachhead. Wow. Was just an exceptional man, a loving man. His son actually is a chef and lives in Manhattan and runs a restaurant in Lower Manhattan. A ton of, he made Franco-American cuisine, not unlike Chez Panisse and Alice Waters or Paul Bertoli or Wolfgang Puck or some other really great chefs of that 80s era.
Yeah, really stuck to the French tradition. Yeah.
He brought a comfort and a simplicity to it and an elevated nature to French cuisine that Americanized it. And I mean, it's just.
It made it more accessible for us Americans who, were at that time, the fresh food revolution that happened, starting in California. And great that it's here in New York too and across the country. Before, Americans were eating meatloaf and things that really were very simply, and it was great that Patrick Clark made it more accessible. Try these beautiful, delicate cuisine. Let's get into talking a little bit more about Southern African American, the labels that are put on food. Let's talk about that.
Well, it's a constant discussion that we're constantly having about. I want to be delicate in saying this, but the co-opt or the misappropriation of African American, that ideology. Look at the historic nature of it. You look at the different dishes that it represents, the ideas, the philosophies, the techniques and styles that are all incorporated into those things. They've been co-opted, misappropriated, utilized for other chefs and other ways. And yes, there are people that are paying homage and respect to those things, but Southern food, which is Southern United States, it's Alabama and Texas and Georgia and
Mississippi,
yeah,
Florida,
those regions where those products, that style was originated, was really built on a very different idea of food and cuisine.
Absolutely.
And one of the chefs that I always talk about is Rufus Estes. And Rufus, first African American cookbook writer, produced a book in the late 1800s that is still actually quite popular today. And when you read that book, you realize that it is a French cookbook, but that it's utilizing California or farm to table techniques. In the 1800s, 1900s, a lot of food was not being flown all over the place, so they had to utilize the local indigenous products that within the areas and then in the places that they were capable of receiving food, whether it be peanuts or tomatoes or all of these different things. Those in turn were those opportunities for them to feature that in their food. So one of my favorite dishes that Rufus makes, which we actually have made here a couple of weeks ago, was a really wonderful peanut soup, which is actually more like a leek potato soup that has a peanut infusion to it. The dish that I'm making, one of the dishes that I'm making here, is a hybrid idea of Edna Lewis, a Southern chef, Patrick Clark. Both of them love sweet potato, and again, there's a very, very big distinction between most sweet potatoes. It's
Yes.
really not culturally appropriate to call a sweet potato a yam.
Really, I didn't know that.
Yes, a yam is really an African word, and it is not this.
Right. So would you consider yam, focusing on West African ingredients,
Right.
more like more?
That's more in alignment to what it actually is.
Right. And so what would be a sweet potato? What is the difference?
Well, it's I mean, from the genes, I don't think an awful lot. I think they're very, very similar in a lot of respects. I think maybe the starch content's a little bit different,
Right.
but for all intents and purposes, I think that they're very, very similar in a lot of the respects of how they are.
So you're here to hear first, ladies and gentlemen. The word yam is more of a West African traditional word, which is very true. I mean, I've dined in different Nigerian, Ghanaian, Senegalese restaurants, which we have a plethora of here in Harlem.
Yay!
And they talk about yams all the time, and I've had a lot of their dishes that feature yam in their dishes. So I'm really excited. Let's get into this dish right here.
So this is a reinterpretation of, and again, here what we hear during History Month is we like to look at from my aspect of it, which is culinary, and looking at and thinking about American chefs have been stood out in their community, their techniques, and it's not fried chicken, barbecue, and even fried chicken is a whole conversation that goes back to slavery times, which we'll discuss in a minute.
Yes.
Both Edna Lewis and we cooked for last week, and this week we're cooking for Patrick Clark. We were creating that we wanted to interpret some of their classic ideas, and both of them have sweet potato dishes with slightly varied flavor profiles that have citrus notes, spice, and in some cases shellfish. So Patrick does his sweet potato salad with crab. We had lobster that was poached one this morning, and decided to do a lobster sweet potato salad that was just very, very simplistic. We're going to make a very simple vinaigrette with a sudachi yuzu paste, which we cure ourselves when sudachi comes on, or yuzu. We in turn cure those with salt and chilies and let that sit around for a while until it gets to the right heat and flavor profile. We hand grind this, add a little bit of additional vinegar base to it sometimes, a little koji, which is a clarified natural MSG. That's a Japanese technique and it's sort of like a spicy chili paste, but it's very citric to it, and it matches incredibly well with seafood. And again, because we're in that time of the year, we want the bitterness and the heat from the sudachi paste. We make a lot of our own vinegars here. This is a celery leaf, infused celery root.
Oh my gosh! If you could just smell that.
Like I've been
We
saying
need
it for years.
vision.
So,
Very clean, crisp scent with a hint of celery, and you could definitely smell the vinegar, but it's not overpowering.
so we do that. That takes us about 6 months to make. And again, it's about building flavors and layering these ideas, layering the concept. This is a very lovely extra virgin olive oil. It's actually Grecian.
Oh, okay. So Greek olive oil. I love that. So going back into talking about what we mentioned with infusion and flavors and bringing cultures together. So here we have some yuzu and Grecian olive oil and, fresh lobster from Maine and microgreens from small chefs in basements. I mean, or small farmers in basements. I mean, this is what food is about.
Yeah. And it's been interesting because a lot of companies have gone through and had to figure out how to, I hate utilizing the word pivot, but have modified the basis of what they're doing. And Farm One has been, and they're amazing advocates. They're really, really great culinary partners for us. They decided once all the restaurants shut down and they could no longer service all the Michelin star restaurants that they were serving, they decided that they would turn towards everyday regular people. So they started selling little plant starts for the different herbs that they were growing, which we bought a ton of. And then in turn, we went ahead and started utilizing their grow program, which once a week we get a really, really cool delivery box of all of these different herbs. So all of the herbs and salad greens that I'm utilizing for this dish is actually from their system. So Farm One, look them up.
Farm One, guys. All right, so let's see. You are getting ready to plate this. So
yeah,
on the plate we have here. What is the name of this particular?
So this is
potato?
Actually a Japanese white sweet potato. It's a purple. It's got a purple exterior and a white inside, and it has it's very, very sweet. It's actually the sweet potato that my son loves to eat.
All right.
Yeah.
And so now he's garnishing it. He put a little bit of the vinaigrette that he created earlier with his house-made vinegar, celery vinegar, and now topping it with some additional of these Japanese sweet potatoes.
And chopped
microgreens,
lobster.
Chopped lobster. Oh my gosh, you guys. The smell in here is so divine. It's warm. It's spicy smelling.
I took a shower today.
All right, so let's talk about taking showers, your son, all these types of like. Let's talk about your son and leaving food memories. What was your fondest food memory?
Oh my goodness. I don't think in all the years I've been interviewed, I don't think anybody's actually asked me that.
That means a lot to me.
It's interesting. I've been cooking professionally for well over 40 years, and I've been obviously eating for 57. I think that there are a handful of really wonderful memories that I have as a child. I mean, certainly there are those times of fishing with my father and working in the kitchen and going through recipes with my mom. There are memories of accomplishments like opening my first restaurant that opening night and having my friends and family there. My last restaurant and its opening night and the insanity that ensued with that. The craziness of opening this restaurant. I think, I'll try to say without crying, but I think probably one of the most poignant memories that I have is my son sitting in the restaurant and eating for the first time here, and being able to have him sit at the counter at a year old and feed him different things and watch him try different foods, and I think that's probably
Your most fondest food memory.
yeah.
Well, I'm glad we took
Yeah.
that personal journey with you. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
a mother, and I'm sure many of you guys are parents as well. We always want to leave legacies for our children, and that's what's beautiful about Black History Month. It's not just about talking about Black people or Caribbeans or Afro Latinos, but really the contributions and the legacy that the Black Americans have left before us, and the legacy that you and I and many of us other Black Americans are going to leave moving forward for our children and people in the future.
It's really awesome. My son's one of my son's godmothers is Dominique Krent. So it's a bit of a foregone conclusion that he will cook at some point in his life, and it's such a privilege, as we have children and we go through this experience and of teaching them and growing with them and being able to relive foods that we've eaten all of our lives and to relive them through their eyes for the first time. Watching my son eat shellfish and having Jeremy Fox, who's one of the top chefs in California,
Yes.
make him his first French fries, and watching him just two-fist these French
Go to
fries.
town on them, fisting it.
There are these just amazing moments that I'm getting to have in my life now because of that, and it brings me back to the importance of the work that I'm doing here, the transparency, the importance of the efficacy and the advocacy that we're representing, and that it's not just about me cooking good food. I mean, I've been cooking professionally over 40 years. There's sort of a given that the food's going to be edible, right? It's like, it's going to be okay.
Right.
No matter what it is that I'm going to cook, it's going to be tasty. But it's the important part now is to relate the information, to relate the story, to let people feel, to let people really feel your heart. The aspect of what we do in this restaurant and what we're hopefully going back to very soon with dining coming back online is the ability for us to connect with people in a much deeper way.
Yes.
And that that the profound nature of what we do isn't that it's about nourishing you, but it's also about nourishing your heart and your soul. Yeah. That I tell you coming and sitting in this restaurant, there's no cameras, there's no technology, there's no distractions. We have you for an hour and a half, 2 hours of your time to allow us to perform for you, not just the expertise in what we do with making a great dish, but relating the information about why I created it, what history, what respects where that creation came from, because you'll have a better understanding and it will actually taste better. It will make more sense how you're thinking.
So speaking on that, let's dive into that a little bit. I love that you shared a very quick trajectory of what it is to be a chef. When you get started, it's about like, I can cook. Let me show you I can cook, right? And then the next step is like, not only can I cook, but I can, lead a team.
Yes.
Right? And then after that, it's not only can I cook and lead a team, but now I can influence culture by opening a restaurant or creating a food or beverage product, right?
Right.
And now at your level in the career, 40 years in the business, and by the way, I cannot believe you've done anything for 40 years. You have to see his skin, you guys. Not a wrinkle, not a blemish. Honey, as they say, that black don't crack, right? Anyways.
Good genetics. Thanks, Mama Dad.
So being a chef for 40 years, how can Anheuser-Busch support Black-owned restaurants? How can they be more effective, Anheuser-Busch?
Well, I think the thing that I'm speaking with anyone that I'm working with, any vendor that I'm working with, is that that there's transparency and real tangible reality that's built together. That we've gotten so far down a rabbit hole with different organizations and different people about what they think we want to hear, what they think is necessary. I want people to be honest with me
Yes.
even if it doesn't, even if it sucks, I'd rather, like I just don't have the energy, the time, or the strength any longer to not be direct. I think that supporting people and doing it in a loving way, thinking for the good of, no longer looking at, and this is something that myself and my friends in the restaurant business, Dominique Crenn and Jeremy Fox, and we're all banding together in the philosophy that there is the necessity that from the top to the bottom, from the investment group and body to the dishwasher, that all of us are pulling on the rope the same direction.
Absolutely.
That we're aligned in the proper ethics, we're aligned in the proper way, that we want people that are truly going to do for the good of. And that's, we're in the hospitality industry. We're here to be of service. And that's going to take on an entirely new light as we're going forward in the restaurant industry, specifically in the hospitality industry. Harlem. Or I should just say Manhattan.
Let's just say city, yeah.
that there's that people are going to start to realize that it's a different world, that we're never going back to the good old days, and that we're living in a new paradigm, and that equality, actionable change has to be the course and the method in which we're doing business together. That we all have to think not just about our own selves, but we have to think about the other people that we're working with and their benefit. Because, it's a circle, it's a small circle, and that we're all interconnected. And that if one of us suffer, we're all ultimately suffering. And I think that we all got that message very early on. I mean, you realize it took 2 weeks for the entire restaurant industry to collapse overnight. Yeah. That's a house of cards. We have an opportunity going forward to build the industry back in the best way possible. It's like, I don't want to go back to the old methods.
Absolutely.
I mean, we built this restaurant to not do that. And that's why I think, to a small modicum, we still exist. Because we started out not following the same old paths that we knew weren't going to be successful for us. I mean, I've owned 7 different entities at varying outcomes. I still have an entity that's over 15, 16 years old, but we won't talk about that. but this restaurant is now, working on its second year under the basis that we thought differently about what we were doing, and that we're here for the community, we're here for each other, we're here for the betterment of our culture and for food, and I think it resonates. I think that people and we had a guest that came through this weekend and bought one of our brunch kits for his wife for her birthday. Yeah. And the photos that we got back from them enjoying brunch and how they utilized the kit that we had made for them was so endearing. It was so wonderful.
It became personal for them.
It's very personal for me.
Which is what you set out to do in this type of intimate setting. I mean, you didn't set out to open a restaurant with like 80 seats and I need 300 covers.
I've done all that.
Yeah, and it's really now more about your soul, as you mentioned, and your heart.
And I think more small mom and pops. I mean, there's a place under the umbrella for everybody.
Absolutely.
And you have to have your widget makers. You have to have, I wish there weren't so many sort of you eat it and it's going to kill you restaurant. I think pops going forward, that it has to be very personal, and it has to be quality driven. It's about the expertise, and it's about the quality of the products that you're putting out in front of people, because ultimately people do care about what they're eating.
Absolutely. So with that being said, I'm sure we have lots of questions and maybe some comments from our viewers. So because we're so far away from our screen, how would you like to do this? Do you want to ask the questions and then we answer them, or?
Somebody's coming on.
Hello, hello, hello. It's me.
Hello.
All right. I will view this chat for you and see if we have any questions. Lots of comments about the video, but we're back. Food looks good. Well, I
Let's talk
have
about that guy.
Adrian, you haven't tasted anything yet. That's no fun.
Oh, because he's still handling his business right now. Chef Russell, why don't you share with us what you're plating now?
So this is a warm salsify and oyster stew. And this it's interestingly enough that it's again sort of a mashup of these different ideas. You're catching me in the in between periods here. So
well, let's talk about that. You're a part of an organization of chefs, and they every week in African American History Month, they have been celebrating African American chefs. And this is what he means. Like last week we did Edna Lewis. This week we're doing Patrick Clark. Let's talk about that. So tell me the name of the organization and,
well, actually,
and what are you guys doing?
It's just us.
Oh, it's just Reverend.
It's just me.
And see, this is how we do it in Harlem. Honey. This is how we do it. So go ahead. So you kicked off an African American celebration of food and experience. Talk about that.
So every month, or not every month, but every February, every year, as far back as the last 5 years, we've done something in respect to Black History Month. And because my lane is food and culinary, we decided that we would spend my time and focus on African American chefs that have made great statements. So I chose my 4 favorite chefs this month to cook around or be inspired by. And again, the first week was Rufus Estes. The second week was Edna Lewis. This week is Patrick Clark, who's my all-time favorite African American chef.
And mine too, by the way.
And then they're all gone. So I wanted to do somebody that spoke to Harlem and spoke to the elevated idea of what Harlem represents in its Renaissance and its culture. So Alexander Small will be our closer. He is actually a Harlem resident and a former opera singer that in turn became a chef and in Europe and was actually friends with Patrick Clark and has all of these amazingly brilliant stories.
And New York Times bestselling chef, and yes,
James Winner, and so
and still today,
culinary god.
Yes.
So we're going to, as I told him, I'm going to wreck his food. But this is a dish that we did last week, which is an oyster stew with salsify, and interestingly enough, both Rufus Estes and Edna Lewis have iterations of this dish. So again, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree with the ideology, but again, the techniques, some of the ingredients that they utilize are slightly varied, and this is one of the ideas that I came up with for my style and technique, which is oyster stew that's made with a fennel onion souris, which is sort of like a rich, unctuous onion vegetable sauce that's slowly braised and cooked. We utilize sake and vermouth with it. We didn't infuse this with any miso or any other elements. Salsify is a really awesome root vegetable, which not an awful lot of people utilize. And I have my good friend to thank for the inspiration behind working with salsify.
Everybody get a Dominique Crenn in your life. You need a Dominique Crenn that's going to give you a salsify root.
She does some really cool. She peels them and then smokes them.
Nice.
And then they use them in a couple of different dishes. And it's got this yummy kind of just crunch to it.
All right, let's taste this. We got to taste this. Both of these.
This is what you got to try.
Okay.
So let's try this. Let me get it.
Yes.
So while you're tasting, I know we have about 7 minutes left. We do want to get some questions in from the chat. I know, didn't it go so quickly? So one of the questions for Chef Russell is, you mentioned that your wife was Bulgarian. Have you brought any of her culture into the food that you cook?
Oh.
So, and if my wife is watching, she don't cook. So that's not true. She tries, and it's really wonderful. Every time she cooks for me, I'm an exceedingly happy man. Her mom, though, is a baller. And her mom is like old school, hardcore meat, potatoes, Bulgarian. They have a beautiful farm and they raise chickens and in Bulgaria. And we've actually sent all these amazing Rose 7 seeds, which are the Dan Barber vegetable project, creating restaurant hybrid vegetables. She's grown all of these amazing ingredients out there in Bulgaria, which I can't wait to go and cook. But I've actually incorporated a couple of her techniques very quietly. We've past been really wonderful. There's a dish called banitsa, which is phyllo dough, feta cheese, and a heavy cream basis. And in its construction, it comes out super light and crispy. And we've done, actually, I need to do it again like really soon, but it creates this really interesting textured, almost like cheese lasagna. That's just brilliant. So yeah, I'm gonna have to make some banitsa.
I'll go ahead and put my address in the chat. You can overnight a nice little bowl of that. We've got one more question that I'm going to get to, but Dylan Ackerman asks, are there any books by African-American chefs that you would recommend?
Absolutely, yeah. There's a ton. Let me grab. I'll tell you this. There's an old school Patrick Clark cookbook.
He's grabbing the cookbook, you guys. Don't worry, he'll be back. But he's mentioning a wonderful Clark cookbook. As you mentioned earlier, Alexander Smalls, who is actually a living chef icon. So here's one book that he's mentioning.
This is Alexander Smalls' last book, Music and Music. And it's a little bit of history and dishes that are inspired by musicians, which in large part, for myself in my career, the prime core inspirations are art and music, which is the driving force for, or the defining force for me to start to recipe write. So this is going to be our next week's work for doing dishes out of his stuff. I'm super ecstatic about the cooking Patrick. The Patrick Clark cookbook is a series of his recipes, but the best part about it, or not the best part, one of the really cool parts about it is the back half of the book is all recipes that were inspired from his legacy. And there are some of the most brilliant California 80s and 90s chefs that have written recipes on behalf of the book and on behalf of Patrick. One of those chefs, Octavio Becerra, who I grew up with, who was Joaquin Spinkel, and I know I'm throwing all these names out there, but Joaquin was this amazing American-French chef who owned the Patina Group, started the Patina Group with Octavio. Hardcore 1980s, 1990s culinary history, but brilliant chef. And I'm really excited to cook his work this week. It's part of our 7-course and our 3-course that's available on Friday and Saturday.
Awesome. All right, so we got about 2 minutes left. We cannot let this go without Adrian. Tell us how the food is. We got 2 minutes.
So first of all, the lobster is poached to perfection. The wonderful vinaigrette that he made with the celery vinegar and the Grecian olive oil really ties in the balance together, because you have a little bit of the sweet, you have some of the garnish from the that he placed, which gives it a nice herbal liftment of the lobster and the sweet potato from Japan. So I say all that to say, as soon as we're like fully open and Reverence is ready to go fully open, take a plane, train, car, quarantine, and then come over here and get yourself some food. You can also order, if you are here in New York, you can order your own bento boxes that Chef makes from scratch from his own hands with his incredible crew. So that's another great way to support this Black-owned restaurant. And make sure you follow Chef Russell on Instagram with Reverence NYC. You can also follow me on Instagram at Miss Snack Enterprises, where we talk about hospitality training, leadership, everything that we just mentioned, where hospitality is going moving forward. So This was such a blessing, honey, as we say in Black History Month, such a blessing to have all of you guys today, this delicious food, and Ashley and everyone there in Anheuser-Busch, thank you for having us. Porter Brown Society, thank you so much for having us.
Thanks, guys.
Trust me, on behalf of everyone in attendance here, this was absolutely our pleasure. Thank you for taking out time to share your talents, your personalities, and all of your knowledge with us. I think we are all leaving this discussion a little bit hungrier and a little bit more educated. So thank you to all of the participants here. Thank you, Montanique, for opening this up. You all have a wonderful day, and be sure to check the schedule for the next event.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.